3, 2, 1, and we are back.
Hey.
What's
Hey,
up,
what's up,
everyone?
everybody?
Welcome back.
Welcome back to the show. Look at Strides, man. Look at him, just living his life, lying down.
Sorry.
What a happy man, dude. I wish I could be Strides every day.
I don't think you should be sorry. But yeah. So we're gonna talk about one last thing here, potentially our most what's the word? Controversial topic. Yeah, it's like what's the word?
I personally
Smash
don't think
loves
it's
controversy so much. It's like, is it really a controversy or is it just the norm? I mean, like, what is it? But...
TK had a really good tweet of like from I think it's like the Futurama where Fry goes up to like this door or like it's like a board and he's like how many days since the accident, and then he puts it, he nails his hand, and then the 1 falls out and it stays at 0. That's literally what's going on. Like, how many days do we have off before we go into another like awkward, controversial engagement to Twitter? But let's get into it, guys.
Sure. And I mean, so as some of you may or may not know, there was a bit of an unfortunate situation with a couple of players, being Stroder and Bocce, who said some things in private discords. When, you know, private isn't so private in this age of internet. Things get screen capped and will be shared for all to see. And of course, these things were very, very bad. Like, there's not a single person who can really justify the things that were said. Like, there is no justification for them. And it's not really so much about like what was said that we want to talk about, but more about how we handle such things in the community. Because
do you feel like there's for the sake of people who are listening who may not know about the situation, is it worth at least pointing out like the most egregious statement that was made? We don't have to say it word for word for obvious reasons, but just so that we don't have people going, well, I don't know what they're talking about, so for all I know, it was just a small statement and it wasn't a big deal. So I feel like for educational purposes, we should at least say like what the most
Right.
Sure. I mean, and there was only like one thing that players said, and it was, you know, the fact that they were using the N-word with hard R in a joking fashion. Like, joking or not joking, it's never gonna be okay. And not even
I think the statement was something like, I'm so and so and I trade slaves and lynch the N-word.
Really,
I believe they
really
like
bad.
the what is the C word now, right?
Yes.
I was about to say
They
C words on 2GG.
I know. Well, I know that in like in radio and in film, they're like the God, what's it called? The 7 swears. You have to avoid using the 7 swears and the 7 swears and the unholy 4 terminology. That's what they call them. So the 7, you never want to say the 7 swears, and you never want to say the unholy 4.
But besides that, they definitely. I think to sum it up, the person claimed that they liked roosters and committing hate crimes. To put it summary.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah. So we'll leave it at that. So yeah, it was pretty egregious and out there. No one's going out there and excusing them, but and I saw actually a recent video from Bam, longtime 2GG friend and friend of mine, and he kind of summarized the situation in terms of the reaction from the Smash community as a whole. As it's very interesting that it's breaking up into like almost two
factions.
One faction is like, you know, oh, we need to cancel these people. Obviously, it's inexcusable. But on the complete opposite end of the spectrum, there are people that are like, oh, you know, we forgive them. Bocce was 15. You know, all kinds of different things. Just kind of borderline apologist discussion. You know, so and I'm not sure where in the middle we're supposed to meet, but it's interesting that it's divided into two clearly different factions. Yeah, go ahead, Sean.
Go ahead. Sorry, I'm very bad about that. I apologize. I think one of the first things before we can even begin discussing it that we have to at least be aware of is among the camp of people who defend it, how many people are defending it not necessarily because they don't think it's a bad thing, but because they are worried that if they condemn this, what about if someone happens to find something that they did in their past that they're not proud of but happen to not get in trouble for?
Yeah.
I without pointing fingers or accusing anyone of anything, I'm certain all of us can think of at least one thing that we've said or done, and for all we know, the people that we affected knew about it and were already cool about it, but it still bugs us. It's one of those things of like, that was really dumb of me, and I'm so glad that it didn't have worse repercussions than it should have. But in the back of our heads, we know that if someone decided to bring it up, there's nothing we could do but own up to it, because we can't just lie to ourselves and say we didn't do that. And we're kind of scared of that. It's a little worrisome to be held accountable for your actions, especially when you already know that you did something that was wrong. But that doesn't change the fact that you did something wrong, if that makes sense. So I I'm wary of people who say, "Oh, we should forgive her. You know, it was a mistake." She shouldn't be crucified, or she shouldn't have to face a big punishment for this. Well, no, I don't think anyone should be crucified their entire lives. But if you do or say something stupid, and there is proof that you did it, or even if there's not proof, but that's in an ideal world, I and I speak for myself as well when I say this. You should not be surprised if you are later held accountable for it. And you especially shouldn't be surprised if the only reason why you're held accountable for it 1 year, 3 years, 7 years later after the event is because you weren't held accountable for it back when it first happened. There's no statute of limitations on this.
I think the good example that I can use without using myself, because I do agree. I was young. I was an idiot. I think Will Smith had a really good thing that he said about his son Jaden Smith, because there was a time where Jaden was making really, really stupid tweets and really, really stupid time. Will Smith even admitted himself, like, I was a fool, but I was a fool in my own time, before social media existed, before Twitter existed, before Facebook existed. So back then I was being a fool on my own. Nobody had to know about it, because the only people who knew about it were the people around me, right? It wasn't on Twitter, it wasn't on Instagram, it wasn't on back then when it was open, it wasn't on Vine or TikTok. It was by myself, and it was something that maybe the tabloid would catch. But it wasn't. That's the world we live in now. We live in a world where you can take literally anything you say or do is post it and share it amongst the internet forever. Once it's on the internet, it's there forever. And I think the problem that somebody encountered this, which hurt me a little bit, but only for that aspect, was James Gunn. James Gunn was actually kicked off of doing Guardians of the Galaxy 3 for an insensitive tweet he made 10 years ago, when he was in a different. Go on. Yeah, no, I know what you're gonna say. Go for it.
I was jumping in to add that, and you have to realize it wasn't even necessarily because Disney had proof that he'd actually done it or continued to do it. It is a very good example, corporate-wise, of how little protection you have in terms of the company keeping you on. If there is any reason at all for a company to believe that you are a risk to keep on their payroll, whether it's for their PR, their press, or that's what PR means, whether or public relations, whether it's for press, whether it's just for their image, you will be dropped like a hot sack of rocks, because the money that they will lose temporarily from having to hire somebody new is not worth the money they stand to lose from bad press if someone brings up that you did something bad and they decide to keep you on anyway. That is how quickly you will be removed from most employment positions nowadays.
Yeah, and it hurt me, because I love that series, Guardians of the Galaxy. I love the first two. Those are my favorite. That was actually my favorite Marvel characters in terms of the MCU. But like dude, I was bummed. I was really bummed that they would actually like kick him out for something he said 10 years ago, in which he later confessed, like, hey, I was a way different person 10 years ago. As a matter of fact, I didn't even mean it in that context. And I got kicked out, and people fought for him to come back, and yeah, he's finally doing the third movie. But like, that just goes to show, and the reason why they had to let him go was because Disney has a stance like, hey, we have a zero tolerance policy, and even though James Gunn has done a lot for us in terms of script and movies, like, we have to let him go, because but this is an example that we have to set, right, where we stand, where the bar. I have even said things that I will admit to anybody, and like Sean said earlier, like, everybody has said or have done something that they are ashamed of, and they know that if like it was brought to light or whatever, it would ruin them, or it would ruin them in some manner or form, employment in general. I can even admit that. And I was a much younger person. Am I liable for my younger self? Back then, no. Back then, young Vance didn't really care. He had a different headspace. 2019 Vance, does he care now? Yeah, I totally wish I would take that back and regret it, because it was stupid and it was idiotic. the context of it all, to me, honestly speaks, is just that when you're young, you do have a conscience. You know what you're saying. You know what you're doing. You're not a kid anymore. You're not that 10-year-old, that 9-year-old that's going to be slinging in curse words because they sound funny or they sound cool to you. You're a 13 to 15, 13 to 17-year-old person who knows what they're saying, you know? And you should kind of somewhat be held accountable.
I think that's because the problem is a lot of people like to think in extremes where they're like, the immediate thought is, oh, if we punish her for this, you don't need to send her to jail. You don't need to like torch her house or destroy her car. No, we're not asking for this person to be like become a convict and have the rest of their life ruined because of something he said. What we want is for someone who did something socially unacceptable to be socially reprimanded for it.
Yeah.
And I think people are entirely within their rights to respond the way that they have to someone making a statement like that. I've seen the argument made that like, that happened a year ago. She was 14 at the time, she was young. First of all, like you said, at 13, 14, I knew about sex. I knew about a lot of adult topics, and I almost certainly knew about bullying and even without talking about racism, I knew about antagonistic, negative, trolling behavior. So
Yeah.
you don't have to be a genius to understand when you're doing something to be edgy. Secondly, oh, that was a year ago. What does that matter? Like I said on the previous one, all it means is that it was a year that this message didn't get shared out for whatever reason, and now you're being held accountable for it now. If anything, it means that it was a year late in holding her accountable for what she said. So, go ahead.
All right, let me bring up a hypothetical and let's kind of mull this one over. I'm gonna bring up Ally as an example. By and large, Ally, if you ask a lot of the top players, they would go through and they would tell you Ally is or was one of the smartest players to ever pick up a controller for Smash. But then all the allegations that came out against him, and he denied them, and then recently came out and confirmed them, confirming that Ally is probably not the smartest Smasher to ever pick up a controller anymore. How do we separate, the feats of the player versus what they've done outside of the game and in that social context? Or should we separate the feats of the player and what they've done outside of the game in that social context?
Let me ask this. Should we ignore Brock Baker's rape because he was a great swimmer? Should we ignore his accomplishments that he achieved for his university because he's or should we still or should we ignore the fact that he sexually assaulted a woman and caused a trauma for her because of the fact that he was winning awards for his school, that he was possibly one of the best swimmers? I know it's a bit of an extreme example, but it's kind of in the same lines of if you are in a position where you are an influence on others, whether it's a position of power, a position of skill, where you are aware of the impact that you have on people who look up to you, it is not on us as observers to determine whether it's our fault for choosing to separate or to combine the act with the player with their skill. It is on the person themselves to conduct themselves in a way that would protect and preserve the position that they have. I don't want to say it's victim blaming, but as a voiceover artist, everything that I say is scrutinized. Now, most of it is under a pretty casual light, but like I have to be careful about being horny on main. I have to be careful about, if people make suggestive comments towards me, like, oh, I'd rather date the actor than the character. I have to be careful about how I respond to that and how it may be interpreted. Even if I am joking, even if the person I'm talking to knows I'm joking, whatever the size of the audience is that can see that conversation or could potentially see that conversation, that's what I always have to have in my head, is who could see this and how might they interpret it. So that's not on us to determine, oh, Ally was such a good player, but all these allegations came out. What am I supposed to do, or how am I supposed to feel? You feel the way you want to feel because it was on Ally to conduct himself in a professional manner, not just as a skilled player, but as a human being. It didn't matter. It shouldn't matter if he was a skilled Smash player. It doesn't suddenly become more okay to do that sort of thing because, oh, you're also winning tournaments.
Yeah, I think that's the problem that a lot of people do feel is like just because you have the best way I can describe it honestly is just because you have clout doesn't mean you're free from the limitations of what to do as a human being. Because I feel like that's also a problem that I feel like some people also have. Like, oh, because he's a top player, like he can get away with a lot, and it is true. Like I have seen it, you know, not in my own region as much, but like I've seen it like in other regions where like there is that sense of like top player ownership. Like top player gets this, top player gets that, top player is free from this limitation. That happens. That really happens. But like I said, just because you have clout doesn't mean you're free from to do whatever you want and not be a human because you've ascended this god level status in a community or in a game or in a level. You're not free from the limitations of being human. No, you're still human. You're expected to do the human thing.
And on a core level, I almost have to ask, because like I think of that news article. I don't know if you guys like stayed on top of news, but there was that news article the other day about the guy, speaking of racism, the guy who had been accepted into Harvard University, who was then later rejected. Like they rescinded their invitation to him after logs came out of like the racist talks that he had with friends on Discord or another chat program. I'm trying to think of where I was. Oh, one of the things that I said on that tweet is I said, at the end of the day, there are 3,000 people applying who would like to go to Harvard, and I guarantee you the mass majority of them have similar qualifications and also didn't say racist things.
Right.
So going back to the point I was trying to make, when we talk about, you know, people's god status in Smash versus the acts that they've done, first of all, they got there from a point. They may have come in good, but they had to work just like anybody else. And there are still just as many players who are all battling out on these lower tiers who have the potential to make it up there, who, again, probably haven't done the things that Ally was accused of and later confirmed. Why deny them the chance to fill that spot, to fill that gap, to have their chance to rise to fame through purely their skill in order to protect someone who is already there but has done things deserving of harming their reputation over that?
Right.
Yeah. I think
blew their chance basically.
Yeah, and
like you get a chance just like anyone else, and it's your responsibility to not blow it. Like
it's
all right.
It's,
so I got. Oh, go ahead, Vance.
I mean, I just wanted to say like one really quick thing before I give it to you, Lux. I think it's like my stance is, you know, I'd rather just give it a Lux because I honestly my personal take on it is just I don't know. I was young, and I do. If somebody were to tell me something like, Vance, you were this person, you said this, you did this thing when you were young, I would apologize. So I don't up to it because I'm 25. I am an adult now. I should be able to own up to the things that I've done, the things that I've said, all that stuff. And honestly, at the end of the day, it's all about, for me at least in my case, it's all about for me being like a human being. It's being the human right. I am not free to be judged as anything else other than human. That's what I was gonna say.
Go ahead, Lux.
Oh yeah. So one thing to think about too, because we talked a lot about bocce in the mix of it. I think being from SoCal, quite a few of us are somewhere between, you know, good acquaintances to good friends with Schroeder in Arizona to varying degrees. And so I'd ask the question to everybody here too to kind of maybe mull over and consider, what is the responsibility if you are friends with that individual person and calling them out for their actions? And also simultaneously, what is your responsibility as a friend with a person and how you interact with them after allegations come out or after a complicated, you know, accusation is made against them?
I will preface this by saying this: the next sentence I'm about to say is purely my own opinion. But with that said, if you are a friend, but you are not, okay, all right, hold on. A friend is someone who is capable and comfortable with calling their friend out on the actions that concern them. Otherwise, they are not a friend; they are a fan or a supporter. Because friendship comes with a level of communication and a level of understanding and a level of trust. A friendship generally should consist of two or more people who want to help each other live their best lives. And if you are afraid of pointing out something that your friend has done that makes you uncomfortable or has made you concerned for them because you are afraid of that ending the friendship, that I that almost speaks to like a level of an abusive relationship where you are only friends on a tedious level because you're only friends on a foundation that isn't allowed to change or isn't allowed to be challenged. And if it is, oh no, it could be destroyed and now we can't be friends anymore. And that's something that people have to deal with on an individual basis. They have to ask themselves, what does this friend mean to me? And do I want to continue? Is it more important for me to associate with this person regardless of what that association means for me versus challenging them when something happens that I know they're capable of better than, or calling them out when they do something that's unacceptable for the sake of trying to preserve a positive relationship.
Mm-hmm.
Mm. I think it's a good thing. Anyone else have anything to throw in on that? I think that's a very.
Sorry, I don't mean to steal all the
No,
spotlight.
This is exactly why we.
I mean, you guys
Really
are probably
glad
wondering,
you
like,
said
Stride's just staying quiet because, like, he's already, like, he's talked about, if you guys follow him on Twitter, his Twitter is out there. He's already said, like, his version of things, you know, he's kind of done. For me,
wait, what? I'm reading the chat. I don't know what.
Someone's gonna have to throw the gauntlet on.
What does he want from me?
I don't know. Let's see where he goes with this.
yeah, I'll just say my thing.
Yeah.
For me, I have a lot of friends who said things in a joking manner that I understand how they're saying it, or they're using words to describe, you know, things that they're saying or what they mean. And it's just between us friends. Yeah. Have I ever told them that I was like, bro, I don't think you should say that? Yeah. I told them to that on their face before. I told them I don't think you should say that, dude. Or I think like, maybe that's a little too far, bro. Like, it's okay with me because you're my friend, but like I wouldn't say that out in public, dude. I wouldn't say that out in general. So I don't think you should say that, honestly. I have said that before. But the thing is, I don't go on social media to tell them and the world, yo, man, I just heard my friend, blah, 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 and I don't think they should say that. And then that causes the commotion we have. I think this is a little bit off topic. I think the wherever Smash Twitter is at, I don't really know where to point it at, but wherever they're at, they're in a headspace where everything is a sponge. They are a sponge. Remember, the funniest thing to me that made me laugh that I never talk about, that is hilarious, and I find it funny, was when Tweak broke up with his girlfriend and he started going out with that other girl. I can't remember her name. I totally forgot. The Smash community just sucked it up. And they started, like, just going about it and making it a part of their lives. Like, dude, what does it matter who Tweak dates? Does that affect you? Does Tweak pay your bills? Does he, you know, pay for your taxes? Is he the head TO? No, dude, he's just a kid. Honestly, it shouldn't affect everybody. That's the thing about, you know, Smash Twitter is just general. You know, it's just general stuff. It is. I'm reading the chat. It is kind of like.
Yeah, no, that's all good. The chat was asking, why has 2GG not put in implement a player code of conduct regarding this sort of thing?
I think we're headed
to 2GG, but
yeah.
there is actually a SoCal player safety
there is
panel.
one. There's just not called 2GG's official conduct for everyone to follow rules.
Right.
I mean, 2GG
Yeah.
doesn't run the like region, you know. They're just the like biggest.
Just host
organization
tournaments,
there is,
man.
Yeah,
We
that's
don't
the common.
control what people say. And
That's the
do,
common
man.
misconception, right? Like 2GG runs
And
SoCal.
actually, it's just that, you know, they're asking where is it, you know. It's one of those situations where if we're talking about from a policy level, should the organization that is hosting the event be in charge of all of the conduct decisions? You know, sometimes that has a tendency of lending itself towards selective enforcement of the various policies. So that was kind of the rationale or an intent by creating a separate player conduct panel, so that there's kind of a objective mediating third party that could be an overriding force for SoCal. They haven't been as vocal as of late, you know, on the Facebook forum and things like that, but they do exist. And, you know, in light of what you're asking for, Greg, we'll do our best to make sure to encourage them to speak out and introduce
Yeah.
themselves in the community. They do exist, I promise you. It's not like some sort of mirrors and
I
shadows. There is a player conduct place, in
Yeah.
place.
Let me retract my statement here. What I'm trying to say is, we live in. There are two sides of this that I do and I don't understand. I'm going to be forward with you guys all. I understand that, like, for sure, there exists a cancel culture that is 100% factual. And it is to a degree that where we see it, where when something happens, they immediately call for that, and I get that. But I also understand, like, there is a level of accountability people need to be held up to. And where it's at right now is, in my opinion, in a weird mix, because there is a blurred line that people do see of top playerness, that god level status. I don't want to go ahead and, like, say anything that people are gonna be like, oh, Vance, you're wrong, well, all about that. But, like, it's just a thing that people we have to come together and kind of understand, like, what you say, you mean. So don't say anything without meaning it.
Yeah, I think this goes beyond just like what you say, like, because I think what Greg's asking is, like, literally, like, behavior. So, like, your actions at a tournament. And I think your questions are fair, Greg. I just want to say, like, me as a person, right, going to events, and I don't really feel like I need a, like, code of conduct to, like, know how to act at an event, because I've been, like, educated through school and my parents and all of this, and I feel like I know right from wrong decently well, as I generally believe, like, most people do know right from wrong. So you should be acting through common sense when you're at an event. But when there are these, like, cases of egregious behavior that happens, and they've been known to happen, they get handled on a case by case basis. And generally, I would say that the people who have had, like, egregious problems here, they get handled, like, fairly well. Like, we have known to ban players for, like, certain behaviors, and depending on the case, like, it's either made public or it's not made public, and that's all depending on, like, the safety of the community, or maybe even, like, that individual. Maybe, like, what they did is like bad enough to get them booted from events, but not, like, bad enough that they need to, like, get, like, roasted by everyone, or made known publicly. You know what I mean? Like,
I would say, going forward, the two most important things that need to be established and implemented for Smash specifically are not necessarily a code of conduct, but a code of enforcement. And that code of enforcement needs to be unilateral and consistent. It shouldn't matter if it's me who does something. It shouldn't matter if it's a no-name who does something. It shouldn't matter if it's Ally or Mango or Hungrybox or Void who does something. If they break the code of conduct, or they break the understanding of what they need to be as a player, the repercussions should be equal, no matter who it is that does it, to teach the idea that you are here to play a game, and that is a privilege, and that privilege can be revoked. It does not become a right, regardless of how good you are at the game. And I still feel, as inactive as I am, so take this with a grain of salt or call me a dumbass, I still feel like Smash has not adopted that level of esports professionalism that has become the norm for things like League of Legends, for things like I'm trying to think, of Overwatch, for any of these big games where you hear these articles about someone who said a racist word or conducted themselves unprofessionally and was disqualified from participating in majors. When's the last time that has happened at a Smash regional? When's the last time that's happened at a major? When is the last time anything of that degree has happened, besides, like, with JK, or has happened to a reasonable degree? And I think that's something that needs to be revisited going forward with the Smash community.
Yeah, I just want everybody in the chat to understand. Like we're for Sean. He's a voice actor. He's helped us out with. He's one of the founding fathers of MSM.
Oh wait, am I causing problems?
No.
In the chat?
It's just I just want people in the chat to in general understand. Like we do not run the community. We are not. Well, Strides is, but like we are not a part of GG. We do not speak as a whole. Like we are just a group of casters and voice actor who have come together today to talk about these kind of deals. We do not speak for the community as a whole, for everybody, but this is just the things that we are talking about because these discussions do need to happen. And if we're having these discussions and this video will be put up, then people can slowly begin to understand like how things happen and how things work. It is a process. It is a process. I do believe I have heard a story in particular of like Sean said, you need to be punished no matter what level you are because that's how it works. You shouldn't be given an all-access pass because you're a top player. I did hear one story in particular at a particular event where a certain top player did create a specific hole in the wall, and he was not reprimanded for it. And one particular person was upset. I'm not going to say any names. I'm not going to say any information. That person got away with it, and things were changed. And it isn't fair that person could get away from it because of his status, and yet somebody else only gets a slap on the wrist. Or that's the problem. We need, like Sean says, playing this game and being a part of it, being a top player, being a streamer, being all this, it is a privilege that not many people get to have. And that privilege can be taken away.
On that positive note, let's wrap up. I think we had a good discussion, a lot of areas that we could definitely push the community forward. That's all we ask, just every step along the way, make it just a little bit better, and there's definitely a lot of areas that the community can grow. But yeah, so thank you so much for tuning in to the Smash Talk podcast. Special shout outs to Sean Chiplock, Sonic Mega for joining in with us. Hey, Sean, tell the people what you're up to next, and
that's what I'm curious.
On social media and all that fun stuff.
Oh man, like what I'm up to in terms of my career.
Breath of the Wild 2.
Anything.
Breath of the Wild 2. I already know it.
That's the hard part is whatever I can talk about regarding my career, I've already talked about on Twitter, and if I hadn't said anything about it, it's because I can't. Like, contractually, I can't. But what am I up to tonight? Well, right after I leave this, I've got some revisions and some auditions to do for games and anime, believe it or not. And then I'm going to go get mad at video games for a while with Natural Doctrine, because I've been playing this turn-based strategy game from, like, 2014-ish, around there. That I QA tested, but I never got a chance to play it for real. And then tomorrow the work grind starts back up. So yeah, I'll probably try and Wi-Fi fiend on Smash Brothers because I think my GSP just passed 5 million. So I've got to.
Hey, Elite Smash.
Yeah, boy. Bruh, right, screw Zelda. I hate.
Dude, that character is just. Oh my god, dude! Like the character is such. No, I hate Samus too because Samus and Zelda are just one-trick ponies. You can win, but you are forced to play their long, lame
exactly
game.
What they're gonna do, and it still works.
And I hate it. That's what upsets me. It's like I know what you're doing, and I know
The easiest does perfect shielding reflect projectiles?
No.
That's the one change they need to make. If you perfect shield. If you perfect shield under the new mechanics, if you take the risk to release your shield at the right time and you time it correctly, it should reflect projectiles. If I can time it, I want to reflect that fully charged Samus shot just like Link does with the Guardian Laser. Let me have it.
Yeah, I just tell people like, who the heck? Okay, I make this joke because I lost this player one time, but like, who the hell wakes up at 3 a.m, or even not even 3 a.m, 9 a.m, and says, "Oh boy, I main Zelda." Oh boy,
3 a.m.
Yeah, like, man, that character is just. All right, well, guys, that's gonna be it for us.
All right, thank you so much.
Yeah, that's gonna be it for us. Sean, honestly, thank you so much for joining us. It's been a pleasure.
Thanks for having me.
We'll see you at Mega Smash Monday 200.
Oh, that's right. That's right. I am going to be showing up to Mega Smash Mondays 200. See how I do after being out of the scene for a while. See how I hold up against the other good Mega Mans? Yeah.
We'll see you in grand finals. Is the moral of that story.
All right.
All right. Let's go.
All right.
Yeah,
And if you guys have any more questions, feel free to follow us on our respective Twitters. If you guys want to question, something like Megan, like what's his next workings, his thoughts on voice acting, all that information.
Don't ask me what the next thing I'm working on is. You will not get an answer.
Oh, yeah, you won't get an answer on that for sure. But you can always follow Sean and hear what he's. You have to wait for his announcement, but I'm pretty sure
follow the Twitter.
Yeah, follow the Twitter.
All the announcements. I hold raffles. I hold giveaways. I post memes. Everything happens on.
Yeah, follow his Twitter. He's hilarious. He does voices. He literally does only everything. Like, Jesus. All right. Anyways, follow Lux, of course. Follow Edmund. Guys, do we have anything else to say?
Yeah, I actually just want to say that this was a great cast so far, especially because we were getting a lot of feedback through the chat. I really appreciate everyone's input. It really provided to the conversation, and it brought up even more questions that really just they need to be asked. They need to be talked about. So
yeah,
that's what this podcast is for. So thank you guys. It would not be possible without you guys.
And if you're watching on YouTube, go ahead and leave some comments because I try my best to answer.
Or even just DM us on Twitter. DM us on Twitter and stuff.
YouTube comments work.
Yeah. All right, guys. Until next time, it has been our pleasure to serve you. Have a great night. See ya.